Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And I started talking with Nathan about this, what they're undergoing with this massive project a little over a year ago. And what they're doing is really special because they're leaning into partnerships because they realize that the problem of solving homelessness in Fresno is bigger than them. And when we got to talking about this, we said it's not just about what you're doing with programs, but how it's going to be affecting our fundraising and communication. And there's a lot of great things that we've learned with how donors are responding to this as well. And I don't want to steal any more of Nathan's thunder. So with that said, Nathan, let me turn it over to you, and you can share what's going on in Fresno.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Brian? We good? Awesome. Thank you. So excited to be here, and it's always a pleasure, and enjoy work with BDI. They've done great work helping us kind of figure out our marketing and some of our strategy for some of these new projects that we're doing. So a little bit of background about the Fresno mission. I gotta click the right button here. Sorry. This next year, Fresno mission is 75 years old. We were the first housing shelter in the Central Valley of California. It started off, it's kind of a typical, bed and breakfast and the shower type of thing, like many missions did many years ago. And we really, as we've grown, as we've done new things, started, tackling addiction and a variety of other things that homeless people face, really started to come to terms with the problem was getting worse. And even though we did good work, we felt like we were growing and we were doing good work, helping lots and lots of people. We really came to terms with the fact that the problem is just it's gotten beyond us, and it's bigger than just us, and we weren't able to just solve the problem ourselves. And the problem has gotten so big that we just came to the realization, like, we can't do it all ourselves. We're one of the largest, if not the largest nonprofit in the Central California area. That's not a school or a medical facility. And even at that point, we just realized that it really was just beyond us. And so figured out that it's not just one organization that needs to solve this problem. And my slides are not moving forward on my end.
There's Nathan. It's actually just a little bit slow today. Oh, and you're on mute, my friend.
I don't know what happened with that. That was weird. Anyway, Fresno, Central California area. Fresno is 550,000 people, give or take, just the city. That doesn't include the surrounding cities. When you include the surrounding cities, we're about 1 million to 1.5 million people in Central California area, and started to do a little bit of a deep dive of nonprofits. And if the problem is beyond us, what else? Who else can we depend on? And I did some research with the IRS and found out that there's 2,129 active nonprofits in just Fresno City. And again, that doesn't include all the surrounding areas. So that's like, and this number was from about 3 months ago that I ran this number. And so that's one nonprofit for every 258 people. And most of that number does not include churches either. And we have quite a bit of churches here in the area. So it's just, we have this abundance of nonprofits, and they're all wanting to do some sort of good work, but there's a tremendous amount of overlap. And so we just really wanted to figure out, how do we use other organizations for not just the benefit of the Fresno mission, but really for the benefit of the community, right? And what if we bring other organizations into the conversation, right? Like, what would that look like if we went to other organizations? We started to ask a series of what if kind of questions, right? What if we could leverage the skill set of some of these smaller organizations and package it with our sheer size, right? We're this big, huge nonprofit in the area. right? And what if we could use our marketing abilities, our magnitude, our money, even our donors, our strength, if you will, not to make us sound like we're awesome, but just purely our sheer size. What if we could use that for the benefit of other organizations, right? And the betterment of the community? What if we helped focus? What if we focus on helping other organizations become better themselves, right? And we created a collective, if you will, of organizations. And what if we put them all on one campus and created a one-stop shop for crisis, right? Shared resources, shared knowledge, shared case management, shared donors, even at some point, right? And we put it all right in the middle of the city, right? In the middle of Fresno. And so we kind of started to go down this list of these questions, right? It is running really slow here. So at the same time, we really started to, sorry, my printer all of a sudden started to function and make noise. We created what we call our crisis wheel, and we really took a look at what the needs of our clients, particularly families, right, need. And most people on this webinar are involved in homeless shelters, and so you understand this. So I'm going to go through it really quickly, but we looked at this and said, oh, they all have a lack of housing kind of at the top. Most of them have no job skills. There's a significant amount with mental health, poor financial health, right? IRS is after them, payday loans, inability to manage money, bad credit, things like that. No parenting skills because oftentimes they didn't have great parents. I would argue, for us, 100% of the people that come to the Fresno Mission have experienced some level of abuse and trauma. Immediate life needs: no clothes, no shoes, no food, a lack of community. You guys know this, right? When somebody shows up at your door, there's nobody that they can turn to, right? They've burned every bridge, or every bridge has been burned. There's no relationship or somebody that they can call on the phone and say, hey, can I sleep on your couch tonight? Or can I have dinner with you today? There's no community. Physical health, right? Undiagnosed diabetes, open wounds and sores on their feet, things like that. Certainly, we all understand addiction fairly well, whether it's a managed addiction or full-blown meth type of a thing. And managing kids is a surprising one when we go through this with our donors. Like, I have 6 kids. I love kids. But if you're a single mom and you have 4 kids and you're trying to raise them in the midst of, everything else that's going on in your life, that's as much of a burden to health as all these other things, right? And so we asked ourselves, like, is the lack of housing cause all of these things, or did all these things cause a lack of housing? Well, we all understand that all these things cause a lack of housing. Well, we took the same crisis wheel and we went to several of our partner organizations that we had a pretty good relationship with, right? And we went to a African organization. We said, hey, draw us your crisis wheel. And this is what it looks like, right? It looks exactly the same. And the only difference is the person in the middle, right? And we went to some orphan care organizations, post foster care and foster care organizations. We asked the same questions, like, hey, draw us your crisis wheel. Dang it, man, it looks exactly the same, right? Mostly. And then even people that aren't necessarily homeless but are almost homeless or right on the verge, right? Or they're couch surfing. They're going from friend's house to friend's house to friend's house and experienced a lot of, trauma, right? Or people that have, been through some abuse or whatever. Same thing, right? Again, the only difference is the person in the middle. Everything else is virtually the same. And so we looked at this and we're like, well, what one organization can manage all of this? And there just isn't one. The government thinks that they can, right? In California, where I am, they just assume, oh, if we provide a roof over their head, everything else will work out. And we just know that that's not the case. It oftentimes just makes the situation worse. So in the midst of all this, over the last several years, we decided to reach out to a bunch of different organizations in our area that we kind of figured were the best of the best that tackled all of these types of things. We ended up with this thing called City Center, right? And this is actually just some of the organizations that have already moved here or in the process of moving here on this new campus. And we actually have a lot more. We ran out of tiles on the thing there. And these are all different organizations that have some sort of specialty in what it is that they do. And most of them only do one or two things, but they do those one or two things exceptionally well, right? And so we call it City Center, and mostly because it's literally in the middle of Fresno. So Fresno City is 17.48 miles from north to south and 16.88 miles from east to west. And where those two lines intersect is this square right here that we call City Center. So we literally are in the middle of Fresno, and that's hence our uber creative name of City Center, right? And so it is a collective of 18 to 20 nonprofits. We currently have 15 on the campus. We have several more either in the process of moving in, or we hope to move in over the next several months. And here we have a homeless shelter. We're in the process of building the actual shelter. That's still under construction. It will have 72 units that will house, it's one building, 72 units that will house 72 families that range from 2 to 10. We do have families up to 10 that we have stay with us quite frequently. Has a grocery store that opened up about 2 months ago that is run by our local food bank, tackles human trafficking, orphan care, and foster youth, emergency housing. We have post-prison resources from an organization that specializes in legal resources for those that have come out of prison, disability services for young children and their families, crisis counseling and therapy from 15 LMFTs. We have a full medical clinic that has 14 patient rooms and can see 90 patients per day. That's open to the greater community, not just our people living with us. We have a charter school that has junior high and high school students on it. That's functioning right now. They're part of the Fresno Unified School District, but they have a bent toward those with that are kids that are in homelessness or on the verge of homelessness or in foster care. They have 263 students registered right now, and 160 of them are listed by the school district as being homeless or in the foster care system. And then we have opening up in January, a hot food dining room, typical of what we would produce, with the kitchen that has the capacity of producing 3,100 meals in a single day. And out front, we are putting in an urban soccer field for kids. This picture is actually a little bit old. Where that parking lot is in the front, there is actually going to be a soccer field for children. And basically, City Center is a shared campus that focuses on people's barriers, burdens, and beginnings that are facing life insecurity related to homelessness, sex trafficking, foster orphan care, poverty, and addiction. And all run by a collective of 18 to 20 organizations. So shared human resources. So one of the things that's really cool about this is the offset of costs. So we've designed this where all of the partner organizations pay below market rate for their office space. That's basically a lease. They pay less than what they would be able to get anywhere else, and everything comes with that: maintenance, conference rooms, community, common spaces, internet, Wi-Fi, the whole bit, right? All the restrooms and the cleaning and security cameras and the whole thing. We manage all of that. And it offsets, so their lease offsets our cost. So the great part for us and our donors is that when you donate to the Fresno mission, 100% of that goes to the services we provide, not to the operations of this big giant campus that has 18 organizations, some of which you may not have even heard of. So the cost of the operation of the campus is paid for by the lease revenue that we get from those organizations. But part of that too is that when an organization is growing, right, and wants to build a building or add services or add, a whole new campus or whatever, everything that they have to go through is, every organization, they have to hire an architect, they have to pay a capital campaign consultant, they have to pay a contractor, they pay development fees, they have to pay a kitchen designer, they have to put in all the equipment, they pay the city fees, right? They pay a furniture designer, they hire an electrical company and a moving company and a marketing company and, capital consultants and all of that type of stuff. And every organization is doing it, and they're all paying it 15 times. And we just looked at it and said, well, what if we just did it one time for everybody and put everybody on one campus? And so we pay one architect and one campaign consultant and one contractor and one set of development fees and one kitchen designer and one furniture designer, right? And pass the cost savings on to all of those partner organizations, right? And so it's just massively cheaper.
And
so
Nathan, I wanted to. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to add in too. The one thing that I've had the privilege of being on the campus and seeing is not only are you doing this, not only are you providing this space, but it's a world-class space. It's, if you were to walk into this office space, it's like you would think you were in a WeWork or some modern office building, and it's truly incredible what's happening there in terms of not just the quantity, but the quality of the environment you're providing.
Yeah. So it creates its own gravity, and so a great story of that, and this has actually happened multiple times. Excuse me. We have a small organization that having really just difficulties financially. They do really great work, and we really wanted them to be here. And we actually approached them and said, hey, would you be a part of City Center? We recognize that you're small, but we love the work that you do. We'll give you an office. And they just couldn't afford it, even though it was this really, really small amount of money. Well, we're having this conversation with one of our donors, a national donor. And it turns out they also fund this small little fledgling nonprofit. And so they reached out to us, this donor, and they said, hey, if we pay for it, will they move in? Right. And this is a donor that otherwise would not have given more and paid over and above. So as a result of this organization moving into City Center, it creates its own gravity. It brought in more money and more resources that otherwise would not have come. And that's not money that really goes to us. It's really going to pay for their lease. That is a benefit to them, but it's also a benefit to the collective as well, because their services are here in our building, right? And so the partnership speeds up progress, right? Every nonprofit has a dream, right? And it's a trajectory of where it wants to go. And so we kind of ask these questions of these other nonprofits, like in 7 to 10 years, what does your organization look like, right? And what if we can help you actually expedite that and do that in 1 year rather than 7 or 10, right? And so we decided that we wanted to put our money forward, build this facility and this campus that would help thrust other organizations much farther down the road that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And so I would just ask all of you, like, for if you're a small nonprofit, right? If you're a small mission, what would it look like, right? If a larger mission or larger organization helped you, right? What would your city look like after a couple of years of doing that? And if you're a large nonprofit and you have the capacity to help others, what would your city look like if you actually leveraged your sheer size to help others and create a partnership? The other thing that creates a scale of economy, right? I talked about that earlier. Contracts are cheaper. It's cheaper to build one community kitchen that's large rather than 10 small community kitchens, right? We have a copier contract for 5. We have 5 campuses. I have 34 machines on a copier contract, right? Which is crazy. But for me to add one mass run copier and put it in the middle of the city center and just charge the penny of each click or whatever it is for the partner organizations, I'm the only one that's capable of doing that. Because for me to add one more machine onto my lease is pennies, because I get the scale of economy. but I can use that now for the benefit of 15 other smaller organizations that don't have that capacity, right? It creates a partnerships. We've learned that we've had to create partnerships outside of our comfort zone a little bit. The food bank is a wonderful, awesome organization here. We have a really good relationship with them. They're not faith-based. They have a lot of their leaders are, but the organization itself is not faith-based. And so we kind of had to ask this question, right? Like, do you have to believe in Jesus Christ in order to help people and serve them food? Well, no, of course not, right? So why can't we partner with them on distributing food and putting in a free grocery store on our campus? They don't have to share Jesus Christ in order to help people with that. So we've just come to this point where we've opened the door to partner organizations that even aren't faith-based, as long as they're not contradicting or promoting other faiths. We just decided we want them to be on our campus and help, right? Like let's work together. And then the last thing is just the advancement of development, right? Being able to leverage our donor base for something that ultimately helps a variety of other organizations in our area is an advancement of the gospel, right? Anyway, whether people recognize that or not. And so again, it brings in just a lot more resources. We've seen a significant increase in the mid-level and major level donors since we've opened. Even just in the city center has been operating for a couple of years, but we just moved our offices here and kind of opened it, if you will, air quotes, to the public just 3 months ago, and we've seen a significant increase in mid-level and major donors since that time. Here's actually a picture of the soccer field out front, right? The other thing for development that it's really helped with is the little red square that you see is a hotel that the city approached us with. We haven't had any government contracts before, but we actually had the city come and say, hey, as a result of City Center and its proximity to this little tiny hotel, we want to buy this hotel and give it to you if you use it for these types of purposes, right? And so again, City Center has brought in resources and opportunities that we otherwise would not have had, simply because the collective work of all these additional organizations that we've put on one campus. So it does have a multiplying effect. We used to say, it used to be like, if you gave us 100 pennies, right, it was worth $1. And now if you give us $1, it's worth 500 pennies, right? Maybe even 1,000. It's worth $5 or $10. And the reason is because of the sheer savings of services. So a good example is, 100% of the people that come and stay with us need some sort of trauma counseling, right? Some sort of clinical therapy type of a thing. And I can go hire 15 licensed clinicians and raise $2 million to pay for that. Or I can just put Resiliency Center, which is an organization that specializes in that. I can just put them on our campus, charge them a really low rate to be here, and I can just send all of my people over to them. And chances are they'd probably do it better than us anyway, because that's their specialty. So the inverse is true as well. If you support Resiliency Center, because they're a nonprofit, they have to raise money, your resources go a lot farther, because as they're sitting there on the couch and doing therapy, that therapist may look and go, you don't have any food for your kids. Like, let's walk over to the building next door when we're done, and we'll get you food today before you leave, right? And the Resiliency Center never would have been able to do that before had they not been here on this campus. So their money goes a lot farther. Our money goes a lot farther, right? And that goes in every direction. So,
Nathan, I was going to ask you a question about this too. One of the things that we were talking about with donors and the mid-major donors is where that money's coming from. And there was a few surprises there. If you wouldn't mind elaborating.
So we've been researching more kind of recently. We did do we're in the middle, kind of finishing up a capital campaign to offset some of the costs of this. And what we've been learning over the last year is that about 75% of all of the money that has come in for the capital campaign are new donors. Like, they've never given to us before. It's not they've just increased an amount. These are organizations and people that we've never even heard of, or we've been talking to for a long time and they've never donated, and now they're giving significant amounts of money. The other thing that was interesting is about 50% of them are not faith-based, or don't have a history of giving to faith-based organizations. They just want to help the community and they love what we're doing, and they're given tons of money to support it. And they've looked at it from the other direction. I don't care that you're faith-based, you're helping people, and I'm going to support that. And so we've had to kind of figure that out and pivot and research through that. And, we're trying to figure out how to capitalize on that long term. But it's been very surprising that so many new people are giving to this. And so many are not faith-based. They're not Christians that we typically would have been marketing to in the past. Yeah. So it's interesting.
And we're not planning on changing your marketing or your message in any way to accommodate it. It's just the power of innovation and the work that you're doing.
So the last thing that I would share before we get to Q&A is, I would encourage your organizations to kind of ask these questions, right? Like, what are you doing outside of your comfort zone, right? That benefits the people that you serve, right? What are the partnerships that you're creating? What and networking together? And how are you leveraging your expertise, whether you're large or small, to further your organization and the partnerships that you have, right? How are you leveraging that to move forward and to get all of you to move forward faster and do more, right? And so that's kind of the challenge that I would throw out. And we can go to a Q&A if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have any questions for Nathan? And feel free, you can type those in the chat. I know a few of you have asked, will the presentation be available after? And the answer is yes. We will absolutely be getting that to you. I would say the other thing that we didn't talk about today in depth was that, the way that we talk about this in fundraising changes because sometimes they're afraid to talk about other partners. And, this is just a proven example that it's okay to talk about your partner organizations and your fundraising. And Nathan, the other thing I wanted to ask you too is when you're having that conversation with these partners, what does that look like? Is it a sales pitch where they're coming to you? Are you going to them? Or are they coming to you? A little bit of both?
Where my screen went here. Can you see my face on the right hand?
I can see your face. Yes.
So I'm sorry. Ask that question again. My apologies.
When you were approaching these partner organizations, what did that look like? Was it were you pitching them, or were they coming to you, or was it maybe a little bit of both?
Both. So typically, we'd be giving a tour. Quite frequently, people have reached out to us and like, hey, can I get a tour? I'd like to learn more about it. Oftentimes it was, hey, I know a guy, and I just got this tour. I know a guy. Can we schedule it with my friend, right? And that friend would actually end up donating something substantial. That happened multiple times. Even a friend of a friend. And with the other ones that quite frequently we describe all of the partner organizations that are in the building as we give the tour, and we walk people around, and oftentimes they'll go, oh yeah, I donate to them, or I know who they are, I know them. And like, yeah, they're here with us. Your money is now being quadrupled because not only do you donate to us, you donate to them, but both sides of that equation, that money goes farther, right? So now it's not being doubled or tripled; it's quadrupled, and they love that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, we do have a question from Mike. This is a very specific legal question. Which is your specialty, Nathan. They are a faith-based organization that does not accept HUD funding. Would a lease agreement with an organization that does require organization be required to follow the reporting of HUD funding rules? So I guess if you had if I'm understanding correctly, Mike, you can correct me, but if you have someone who's taking HUD funding and they move in with you, does it require you to comply with those rules?
I don't know that anybody with us is taking HUD funding, but typically, I'm not a legal specialist, despite what Brian says, but typically it should not, because that leases the leases for us are based on office space. So the leases require a partnership and collaboration for their clients. It does not go beyond that legally, right? So it doesn't, if they're paying us for a space where their money comes from, quite frankly, is irrelevant. It should be irrelevant. It is to us, and I would imagine it is for them. That's my uneducated response to that question.
Also, don't take under a major construction project in the middle of a pandemic. That's the unsolicited advice, but you guys really powered through it. Yeah. So,
anything else?
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Brian, Nathan? If after the webinar, if you do have questions, feel free to email us, and Brian or Nathan a message, and we'll pass it on to them and we'll get back to you on your question. But thank you guys for being here today. Thank you everybody for attending and listening in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Good to help if anybody.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Bye.